Joining us now is Colonel Oliver North, the New York Times bestselling author of American Heroes in Special Operations. Colonel North is the host of War Stories on the Fox News Channel and the founder and honorary chairman of Freedom Alliance. Colonel North's newest book is called Heroes Proved. And Colonel North, as always, it's good to have you with us.
It's great to be with you again, Kathleen. And by the way, right behind me, you can see the care packages that we're shipping out from Freedom Alliance to our soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, and Marines. All those will be gone before the end of this week.
Real quickly, how can folks help out if they would like to help?
Well, go to the back of the book and you can find the address for Freedom Alliance. freedomalliance.org is the website. All we do is support America's soldiers, sailors, airmen, guardsmen, Marines, and law enforcement deployed to protect us from the worst of what our adversaries would do.
All right, let's turn to current events right now. President Obama and Speaker Boehner are getting close to a deal to avert the so-called fiscal cliff, with the president presenting a counteroffer, which includes $1.2 trillion in revenues for those earning $400,000 or more annually, a potential 2-year debt ceiling increase, and an end to the potential sequestration cuts. In your view, is this a good or bad deal for our men and women in uniform?
Well, what we're not seeing is what it's going to do to them ultimately. They're going to take some big cuts in defense. Will we have enough at the end of the day in our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard to protect this country? Will we still have any kind of ballistic missile defense in it? See, the problem with what they've been doing is kicking this can down the road so long that there's no certainty as to who's going to be able and how many we're going to have to protect this country from really serious adversaries. We're not just talking about radical Islamists today in 1 or 2 countries. We're talking about an expansion of it all over the Middle East. You're talking about North Korea with an intercontinental ballistic missile capable of hitting America's shores from North Korea. Think about what it means if the Iranians, the #1 customer for North Korean nuclear and intercontinental ballistic missiles, get that missile. If you think it's only because we don't care about the accuracy, consider this. Do the mullahs running things in Tehran, the ayatollahs out there, really care if they hit Boston, Manhattan, or Bayonne? I don't think so. All they want to do is blanket somewhere where they can effect terrible tragedy on this country.
Now, not touching defense spending has been an article of faith for the GOP, but there are reports that some Republicans are now actually okay with defense cuts. In fact, Speaker Boehner's Plan B for the fiscal cliff actually allowed cuts to defense. What do you make of this, and are you okay with this?
Well, look, they're talking about making Chuck Hagel, ostensibly a former Republican senator, the Secretary of Defense. Chuck Hagel is known as one of the great Israeli phobes of all time. And that kind of thing with America's only real ally in that part of the world, a formula for disaster. What I'm saying is the American people need to tell their member of Congress is we need a strong defense to protect us and to prevent wars. You can't get away with simply leading from behind, kowtowing to foreign potentates, apologizing for America, and gutting our defenses.
Colonel North, you just returned from yet another trip to the Middle East where things continue heating up. Yesterday, Israel's Deputy Speaker of the Knesset, Danny Danon, told me that 2013 would be the end game, the year Israel addresses the Iranian nuclear threat. What action do you see Israel taking next year, and do you think it will involve a military strike?
Well, let's go to what the options have been. It's been diplomatic and economic sanctions. Anybody who thinks those work need to look at the 40-year history of economic sanctions against North Korea. In North Korea, grass is a vegetable eaten by the people, and they've got nuclear weapons and intercontinental ballistic missiles. And so something more stringent than what's been done to North Korea is going to have to work. Otherwise, the military strike is the only option.
Do you see that happening next year?
No, I don't have the gift of prophecy. One of the ways in which you could affect change is supporting a change of government in Tehran, which the Obama administration has steadfastly refused to do.
Now, the U.S. is sending Patriot missiles and troops to Turkey for defense against Syria. Recently, the U.S. and other nations recognized the Syrian opposition in its fight against Assad. Let's say President Assad falls. Has the U.S. done enough to work with the opposition to lay the groundwork for a stable post-Assad government? Or are you concerned Syria could go the way of Egypt?
Well, or Syria could go the way of Libya. The last time I checked, we had 4 dead Americans in Benghazi because they thought they could work with the opposition. Clearly, that wasn't the case. Morsi in Egypt is not an ally of the United States, yet we're still sending them billions in American foreign aid. We've got to ask ourselves, what is it we're supposed to be doing to gird our friends in that part of the world and make sure that radical Islam is not what's going to govern all of that Middle East on the north coast of Africa, and the south side of the Mediterranean Sea.
Benghazi, what do you think additional hearings will show? Will we ever get to know the real story behind what happened there?
Well, if people keep fainting because they're dehydrated and can't testify because of concussions, we're probably not going to find out in the near term. Someone in the Congress of the United States needs to ask the right questions. What was the ambassador doing in Benghazi? What was done in the weeks, months, and days leading up to that event that would have aided in securing that facility? And what was done during that event? Far more important than somebody altering the talking points for the ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice.
Now, getting back to Syria real quickly, the U.S.-Syria foreign policy, do you think it could lead to a strategic disaster that could threaten Israel, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, and Iraq?
It could happen that way tomorrow. I mean, consider that they've got Scud missiles, they've got replenished missiles from Russia, which has certainly not been helpful to us in the case of Syria. They've got a major Russian naval base at Tartus on the coast of Syria, and you've now got chemical weapons being mixed that can only be used for a 60-day period. It does not bode well for the people of Syria or our allies in the region.
Now, we talked about Egypt earlier. The head of the Democratic Party there, Ahmed Saeed, told Newsmax recently that the Obama administration has turned a blind eye to the dangers of the Muslim Brotherhood. Do you think that's true? And if so, why are they doing this?
Well, I think the Obama administration has turned a blind eye to radical Islam since before they came to office. I mean, if you look at everything that's transpired since the famous Cairo speech in 2009, it's all been an embrace of those who are the most radical elements in that part of the world. That is not a good sign for America's foreign policy.
What about potential Secretary of State John Kerry? Would he be a good choice on the part of the Obama administration or not?
Well, you know, it'd be high time for John Kerry to answer some questions about what he did back in the 1960s to denigrate the sacrifice being made by 58,000 of my colleagues who didn't make it home from that war, by all those of us, the millions who served honorably in that war. It'd be lovely to hear those hearings if the right people would ask the right questions at his Senate confirmation hearings.
Do you think he'll be confirmed in the end?
I certainly wouldn't vote for it.
If not him, who would you support in that position?
Well, I don't know. I'd like to see some nominees that actually make sense. I haven't seen any yet.
All right, let's turn to the massacre at Sandy Hook in Newtown, Connecticut. The massacres reignited the debate over gun control. Col.North, do we as a nation have to have a serious conversation now about gun control? And do you feel that gun legislation and regulation is the answer to mass shootings like Sandy Hook, Tucson, Virginia Tech, Fort Hood, and so on?
Kathleen, look, there's no doubt that what happened in Sandy Hook is a terrible, terrible event. It's not just a tragedy. It was a massacre of the innocents. I refer you to the good book, which is exactly what happened in the aftermath of the birth of Jesus Christ. The terrible things happen without firearms. You take the Edward P. Murrah office building in Oklahoma City, blown up with 169 people killed, over 40 of whom were children. You take the massacres that happen in other parts of the world. Gun control has already been an issue in America. It's called the Second Amendment to our Constitution.
Col.North, last question for you is on your most recent book, Heroes Proved. It's a fantastic read. Would make a great gift for anyone around the holiday season. Are you planning to write a sequel, and where can folks find your book?
This is a sequel to 3 other novels with Peter Newman in it. This book, Heroes Proved, is still available in time for Christmas. Signed. I just signed 1,000 of them with that hand, and they're in the warehouse waiting to go. If they go to olivernorth.com, they can get a copy of this shipped even to an APO overseas in time for the holidays. And one of the things, Kathleen's been happening as I go around the country, literally to every military base as I travel down from Washington. This book is a favorite for those who've served in the armed forces of the United States or those who are serving today olivernorth.com to get signed copies of it.
All right, Colonel Oliver North, thanks so much for being with us today, and have a Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas to you, Kathleen, and all of our friends at Newsmax.